Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Today we have something special, something different. A little Celtics fan coming on. It hurts. It does hurt, but it needs to happen because as Sixers fans, I think it's good to hear the other side. It's good to hear about the rivalry and to hear what they think about this basketball team because sometimes we can get sucked in. You watch Ben Simmons do some things and you get all drawn into how powerful he can be, but in reality, there's other people out there watching him from a distance, and I think it would be a good idea to talk about the Eastern Conference as a whole, the 76ers, even the Celtics, Brad Stevens, Kemba Walker. Do they have a real center that can play against Joel Embiid if they match up in the postseason? So I have a buddy here with me. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? My name is Tiger. I'm a college friend of Brody, back from his junior hockey days. Diehard Celtics fan of Sports Talk with Broads, fan of everything going on that side of Philadelphia. But yeah, man, I'm just here as a fan and as an enthusiast, ready to challenge your boy.
This is going to be entertaining. But before we get into the Sixers and the Celtics conversation, because that's going to be the juicy part of this, why don't we touch on the NBA All-Star weekend? Because I thought it was very entertaining. After the All-Star game happened and you saw the fourth quarter, Kyle Lowry taking charges, which I do at the YMCA, and I call blocks on myself, and people are like, who the hell is this kid? It's like, I should have got there sooner. So I get it. I respect it, right? I thought it was great. I also thought that a little bit of me believed it was good just because they felt like competing. Like if it was a normal 48-minute basketball game and they competed, it would have been just as good.
I totally agree with that. But like we were talking a little bit before we got on air, I just think a lot of it goes to the fact of like you're playing with an incentive. I think when you put the best athletes in basketball together, you put the all-stars together, and you force them to play to a point that actually completes a game and they're not restricted by time. I think you get the best out of them. And like you said, I think that's why playoff basketball is one of those things that people tune into so much more, is because you get in the best 8 teams playing 48 minutes of basketball. And that's from the offensive side and the defensive side. But any other night, you're lucky who's playing, if they're on a minute restriction, or if they give a fuck where they're at in the seedings. Excuse my language, but that's
fair. Now let me ask you this though: if they didn't have the first 3 quarters and they just went with a timeless game that had a point total, wouldn't that be the most beneficial part of this then?
Yeah, no, I think something like that. Honestly, I think if they're gonna try to push it to get the best out of these basketball players, I think that's the next step you take. But you also got to think about, I think a lot goes into the idea of, I think your own personal minute restriction. Then I think at that point it becomes more of a politics thing also about who's playing. Like, perfect example, if I'm the Celtics, do I want my young star who just played Thursday night, who played 42 minutes, to play Sunday night another 40-minute game? At that level with those stakes, I don't know if I want 3 of my guys playing in that game like that.
It's funny you mentioned that, though, because here in Philly, we watched Joel Embiid. He played a ton of minutes. He didn't even have the splint on his finger. We're questioning, well, what the hell is going on with this guy? There's always something with Joel Embiid. I guess this is kind of a perfect segue to go into the conversation we wanted to start with. So we'll start with the Sixers first. And I am a huge fan of Ben Simmons. Like, I understand that he will be a problem in the postseason without a jump shot because teams are going to sag off in the half-court sets. It's going to be an issue. He gets away with it in the regular season. He needs to add that. I also do know that he plays elite defense 1 through 5. His passing ability is insanely fantastic. He facilitates at a beautiful level. I love Ben. I understand he is very frustrating to watch, and he has a huge gap in his game. But how do you feel about Ben Simmons? Take away the diehard Celtics fan in you, and from a basketball fan, because I know you are a fan of the game as a whole. What do you think about Ben Simmons?
I think Ben Simmons is at a point of a young star where he's still so inconsistent. And I think we've hit on the conversation a few times ourselves, just privately. I just don't know what Ben Simmons you're going to get night in and night out, because I think if you get the Ben Simmons that we've seen in spurts of greatness, 25, 12, and 10. Like, there's nobody else doing that besides the Russell Westbrooks, the James Hardens, the superstar, the elite guys. But when you're so young and you're that talented and your team is built around, I wouldn't necessarily say you, but I think built towards Joel Embiid, it's kind of hard. And you kind of get lost in translation of what does my team need me to be? Because one night they say they want me to shoot. They want me to become the shooter, but they need me to drive. But it's hard to drive when you have that big body in the paint. But I think potential-wise, the potential is unlimited with him. But it's more or less, is he gonna like turn it in night in and night out? And like, let's be honest, I don't like to talk about the off court stuff that much. You're walking around with a Jenner, like, like, are you trying to be a personality? Or are you trying to be a basketball player? Because when those two worlds collide, you get lost in translation. So I think it is hard, but is the potential there? I think he's a great basketball player, but the deficiencies in his game are going to have come out at the worst times for him. So I think
I agree.
They overshadow a lot of the other stuff.
I definitely agree. It's funny you bring up the off the court stuff because that's something we don't really discuss here. I know it's in the back of everybody's mind, but for the most part, we don't really dive into it. He does have that personality where he thinks more than just basketball, and he was always brought up that way. He's the prince. He comes in the league, he's the prince, and he's got the cars, and before he signed the extension, it was all about him wanting to go to LA because that just fits his personality. But there is something to be said about hanging out with the Jenner and the fact that they break up every single week and then get back together, and I guess we just kind of overlook that because we're so frustrated with the no jump shot thing. He's just, it's because you do see the spurts of greatness, and then it's, a game where he takes 4 field goal attempts, and it blows my mind. But he's so good when he's on, and that right now I'm trying to process it, and it's making my blood boil because I know how talented he can really be.
But let me ask you a question now, right? So when he was coming into the league, who was he anointed as the second coming of? Let's be honest.
LeBron James.
LeBron. And now he signed to Clutch Management, I believe. So my question is, how much? And you see, LeBron loves him. Last year, he traded All-Star picks, I think, for him.
So, and he picked him this year, yeah.
Yeah, and he takes them. So my question is like, how much do guys get overshadowed by their mentors and like who they're trying to be rather than being who they should be or who they are supposed to be for themselves?
So I guess what you're saying is expectations change a lot. And you can even put that with this 76ers team. Where they're at right now, they're not horrendous. They have a ton of wins. But coming into the season, you hear the media, you hear the conversations. They're going to the finals. They're going to walk to the East. James Ennis said he's not even here anymore. And they're not doing that bad. On the road they are. But as a whole, I mean, it's not like they're falling apart completely. But expectations going into the season, well, that's going to change your mindset.
I think we're guilty on this side. We know all about expectations.
Well, yeah, that's what I've been saying it for pretty much the last 2 months. We are the Boston Celtics of last season.
No, but I think with Philly's issue, it's just an identity crisis more than anything. Because I think what people don't realize is how much home court advantage plays a factor. Because there's nights where guys are off, but all it takes is a 6-0, 8-0 run to get a crowd behind you, and it breathes new life into you. There's always this funny thing that analysts always say is your bench is always better at home. Can you bring your bench on the road? And I think the reason why is because the bench feeds off straight energy. So if they're able to give you that, and Philly's rotation is confusing to me. I don't know what I'm gonna get by who. The only person, and I'm not sure. You get much production from any bigs off the bench?
Well, now it's going to be Al Horford because after the last game against the Clippers, you signed the man to $100 million. But when there's a stat where the Sixers, when they won 10 games, was it 2015, 2016, their offensive rating was 98.4. The Sixers with Al Horford, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid essentially have the same exact offensive rating when they're on the floor at the same exact time. So that's embarrassing when you think about it. So now that he's on the bench, that is your big man production that in the playoffs I think will be utilized better than regular season ball, I'd say. But it hurts to have $100 million on your bench.
Yeah, no, because you could do that 4 different ways, $100 million on your bench. But I think what Al Horford brings to the team is maturity. And I think he's somebody guys can rally around, but I'm going to be completely honest, just because of the personality Embiid has, I don't know if he's bought into the idea of Al Horford on the team yet. And I think that's where you see Horford's willing to give the young guys the freedom, but he also demands like his own command and respect. And I think there's still some friction there. And I don't think it's like animosity or anything like that. I just think two different set of styles. Like, look at the system Al is coming from. And just even before that, when he was in Atlanta, Mike Budenholzer runs a certain type of team. Brad runs a certain type of team. And Brett doesn't know what he's doing with his team. So I think he needs somebody like a veteran needs consistency. And with Philly this year, it's just been inconsistent. And I follow you on Twitter, and I go through your threads all the time. So I see like some of the conversations people have about Brett, and it's like,
he's on the hot seat here. Everyone pretty much hates him. I don't hate him. I don't think he's as bad as people say, but I do think there needs to be a change up just based off of the message running dry and having going from more of a player's coach. I think it's time now to develop into someone who has a little bit more power, but not anything crazy like a Tom Thibodeau.
You don't need Phil Jackson. Nobody needs Phil Jackson.
Right.
But you want somebody who can demand the respect of the players, but also give them a long enough leash to develop and play their style. What made you select them or bring them into the team? Because I think that's the one thing a lot of like professional coaches lack, and I think that's Brett's issue, is trying to find what works best for your guys within your system. And I think that's why the best coaches in the league are who they are. Like Pop, he'll develop you, but he's going to develop you because your style's gonna manifest within our system.
No, I agree. And watching Al Horford play this season, and he is playing the 4 position, which changes a lot. But when you don't have a traditional point guard who can run pick and roll. I mean, Al Horford was great at the 5 in Boston, and they did a lot of pick and pops, and he'd get that mid-range jumper. He's playing a stretch 4 role here with a point guard who doesn't shoot the basketball. It just didn't work in the system that Brett pretty much was running. And to be fair, though, with this group of guys, a point guard who doesn't shoot, Josh Richardson, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Al Horford, it's not an easy thing. It's not like there's a ton of coaches that can just figure out this roster instantly and Brett just can't. It's such a unique group of individuals.
Now, who you have coming off the bench? You have Mike Scott?
Yeah, who's been awful. So it's Mike Scott at this point. I'm going to throw Al Horford in there because he is coming off the bench. Yeah. Matisse Thybulle and Furkan Korkmaz. But we picked up Alec Burks.
Boys. Those are your boys, those two right there.
Yeah. What do you think about Matisse Thybulle?
I think he might be a steal in the draft. I think he might be one of the steals of the draft. I think defensively, what he brings at that age, you don't see much of. And I think if he's developed properly offensively, he can have a long lasting career in the NBA, where the lifespan of NBA players isn't the same what it used to be. Due to the G League, the international basketball, things like that. But I think he has the potential to have a long, successful career if his offensive game can, at some point, intersect with his defensive game.
It's funny because I hated the draft pick at the time because we needed someone who can score, and we pick up another guy who can just defend, and he averaged 9 points per game at Washington, and his 3-point numbers went down. I'm freaking out on draft night. I'm pissed. I wanted Carson Edwards. That would have been the second-round pick, though. But with that first-round pick, I wanted to go out and just grab. We had 3 picks within the 20 so pick in the draft all the way to the 33rd when we made the switch with Boston again. I wanted to just grab 3 shooters and hopefully pray that one of them would hit and be able to be effective. But with what Matisse Thybulle brought to the table, I don't even think Elton Brand and the Sixers knew that he would be this effective this early, because if they did, or if any other team did, he would have been way higher than 20th in the draft.
Yeah, but now let me ask you a question. How much do you think he thought he should have went higher than where he went, so he's playing at a level where he's trying to prove something? So I feel like some guys who are selected lower on the board sometimes are in that like prove it to me stage their first 2-3 years. Like Jaylen Brown, perfect example. He's the perfect example of something like that right now. And I think that's going to happen with the guy from Philly. I just think hopefully he can stay consistent, because it's easy to fall off after a good rookie season. Because and you hit on it earlier, it's like, what happens once your expectations become that?
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, he had such a crazy year, his rookie year defensively. It's going to be hard to match that in his second season. But he doesn't seem like he has the personality where it eats him alive that he was drafted where he is. I just feel like he's this super nice kid who just goes out there and plays, and it happens to be solid. He's got the dimples. He's always smiling. He just has like a super nice personality where he just plays, and this is how good he is.
Yeah, I think from the brief interviews and the brief moments I've seen him with the media, I can see that he doesn't have that chip like other guys. But we'll see. Like I said, I think it's just going to come down to what happens once your expectations become that. And are you able to do it night in and night out?
All right, so before we move on to the Celtics, I guess our last thing when it comes to the Sixers is, where do you see this team going? If you had to guess right now on where this team falls at the postseason, where do they finish off? My guess, sadly, is I do believe it's probably going to be another second-round exit. The only thing I'll say about this team is when they are at the best of their game, and this is something I've said for a while now, like they are inconsistent. They do bother me throughout a regular season because there's nights in Atlanta where they don't feel like competing, or a night in Orlando where they just lay an egg and they don't feel like playing hard, which is standard in the NBA. But when they do play their best, it is good. I mean, it really is at the top of the Eastern Conference. So that's where, when it comes down to the playoffs, I guess I have this blind faith that, just being a fan, I guess, having the optimism of when it is playoff season, if they felt like turning it on, they could maybe make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but I don't see them as a legit title team or anything.
So I go back and forth. I think a lot of it goes to like where their history in the last 2-3 years. Like, look at last year. They were one shot away from the Eastern Conference Finals and possibly being in the finals. I think, me personally, I think they would have beat Milwaukee. And I might be one of one in Boston to really think that I think Philly, come playoff time, are a legitimate threat. You got to beat Philly at home.
Very true.
At some point. It really depends on where they end up in seeding. If they end up in that 5 seed, I don't like them going far, because I think Miami will give them a run for their money in Miami. I think that's a 7-game series, easy.
Well, if it's a 7-game series, you got to keep in mind that right now the Sixers are 9-19 on the road. So if they got to go win a Game 7 on the road, that's scary.
That is scary. But that's why I did. But I'll go 60-40 if it was a Game 7. I still go Philly just because of the experience. They've been there, and they know what it was like last year to go Game 7. But I think their ceiling is the Eastern Conference Finals. At this point in the season, I think they can knock off Milwaukee if they play them. But I think it's hard to 3 series. If you got to go through Miami, Milwaukee, and Boston, I think one of those you're gonna trip, because I don't see winning a series on the road.
No, that's very fair. So I guess we're on the same page.
Yeah, well, I think we're on the same page, but I think Brett's gonna have to figure out some sort of identity and what he's gonna do with Ben and Embiid before next season, because I've told you, like, I think this project is almost running its course, and you have to decide what you want You want to stay, you want to push the organization behind Ben, or you want to push the organization behind Embiid, and who has the bigger window? Because I think ceiling wise, we can say Embiid because there's nobody as dominant as he is night in and night out. But I think just being his size, the way these guys' bodies have like broken down as history has shown us, I don't know if he gets 10, 15 years in this league.
No. Longevity wise, it's a no brainer. It's going to be Ben Simmons.
But yeah, but if you're talking about win now, let's throw money behind somebody and whose style, like the in and out, you might have to go Embiid. But I think personality wise, he just, like I've said it, man, he just rubs me the wrong way. Like I get it. I'm a jokester. I'm a former athlete. Like I love to talk my shit and I like rile people. But I need to be able to do it night in and night out, performance-wise, and I can't keep coming up empty and like still playing the game. Like, come on, man. Let's be honest. Embiid was playing the humble humility thing early on in the season, and all it takes is Jimmy Butler to tweet you or Instagram you to have you kick out of that, and then like not reciprocate like positive energy to your fans, and like, come on, man. Like,
I love Jimmy Butler.
yeah,
I really do. I miss him so much.
I think he represented Philly. Like I thought he was a Philly blue nose, like blue collar guy. Work hard. I'm gonna get my 20 points. I'm gonna get my 6 rebounds. But everything I do is gonna be worked for, and everything you earn on me on defense will be worked for. And I think like Philly lost that part of them.
No doubt. No, it was a huge loss when it comes to the personality of the team, and it sucks because I don't mind Tobias. I know a lot of people complain about Tobias's contract. He averages 20 points per night. I know he takes a lot of shots. He's the farthest thing from the issue, I'd say, when it comes to this team.
Yeah. I think you guys miss JJ, man. I think you guys miss JJ Redick, especially with Ben's game. I feel like JJ was as efficient as you're gonna get from that position. Who's not a superstar? The shooting guard is a superstar position right now, and if you don't have one of the top ones, you literally go into like a 2A. There's no 1Bs for shooting guards in the league. You have 1As, and then you have the 2As. And I think JJ falls in the 2s still to this day. Any night he'll give you 18, 4 threes, give you 4 fours. I think he could give you that on any night. And I think Ben was able to really come into his own as a point center the last few years because of JJ in the corner.
Yeah, we are trying Furkan Korkmaz at this point, but yes, we need spacing, and that is an obvious issue. But let's move on. I guess it's a good time to move on to the Celtics, and they are playing. Yeah, okay, I see you with the celebration over there. They're playing well. They're playing good basketball. They move on from Kyrie. They get Kemba Walker. I like the matchup with the Sixers against the Celtics, and I guess it's because of length. One, I think their length is a big problem for the Sixers' length is giving the Celtics problems, and they don't really have a center that can handle Joel Embiid, and that was part of the $100 million to Al Horford to, I guess, steal that from you. Not so much fit with the team, but no, they have Jason Tatum, they have Kemba Walker who scores a ton of points. So it comes down to when it comes down to the matchup, though, I still think the Sixers might get it just based off of length. What do you think?
I think if they matched up in a 7-game series, I think the one thing that's going to affect everybody in the East is the fact you don't have one person to key on defensively. Like right now, the Celtics have 3 guys averaging 20. Give or take a few games, you can have 4. You could have easily had 4 guys with Gordon Hayward averaging 20 points, and then on top of that, you have Marcus Smart. You have Marcus Smart on off your bench who can give you 20. He gave us 30 the other night against against the Clippers. He gave them 31 points. And then who else? Besides that, though, our bench is as deep as people like to think they are. They're young, unproven, but we have bodies. We will throw bodies, but I think in terms of our matchup with Philly, just our scoring threats and our ability to switch defensively helps us better than anybody else in the league. Yes, you guys can kill us with Embiid, but I think Daniel Tice, Enos Cancer, I think those guys are willing to put up a fight and make them work for it. And I just think you guys have enough scoring power to match.
Now that the scoring would be an issue, I also think you guys have better coaching. So coaching can play a factor with, maybe you don't have someone to guard Embiid, but you work around that.
That's get streaky though. Like honestly, the last time we played, the last 2 times, Josh Richardson has erupted for 25, 30 points. Like he's a streaky shooter, and he's one of those guys that sometimes when Marcus Smart hedges off him or gives him any type of space, he hits the open jump shot. And I think that can kill us. And I think, like you said, I think Brad makes the adjustments needed to kind of tighten that up and make sure that doesn't become a constant.
Yeah, I definitely agree that Brad Stevens is going to be a difference maker when it comes down to the postseason and playing each other 7 games, and Brett hasn't done a great job at making adjustments. Who knows if they're even going to see each other? And speaking of seeing each other, there's so many possibilities. We can go into the Eastern Conference, and there are some teams that are doing better than we expected. The Miami Heat, I would have never expected them to be this great right now. You also have the Toronto Raptors. They lose Kawhi Leonard, and they still compete at this type of level. It's pretty impressive. So what do you think about these two teams, the Heat and the Raptors?
Just to start with the Raptors, I think you got to tip your hat to Nick Nurse. I think it goes to show that last year wasn't a fluke. And what I mean by that is not necessarily the championship, but just the level of play you're getting night in and night out from these guys. I don't know how well Pascal Siakam would have been somewhere else. OG, I think OG too as well. He kind of revived Serge Ibaka's career. So I think he's getting the most out of these guys on a consistent basis. And like we said earlier, it's hard to get consistent nights out of professional athletes, especially when they're in the stretches of the season like they're in now. An 82-game season is kind of long, and you get that with baseball. Get that with baseball too.
No doubt.
But yeah, that being said, I think this goes to show how well of a coach Nick Nurse is, and that he's got guys that are going to compete. And I think a lot of it too is they have a chip on their shoulder. Like, how many championship teams do you know lose their best player and are like, all right, it's time to.
Especially in this sport too, because we all know you get a LeBron or you get a Kawhi, that changes significantly what type of run you can make.
Yeah, it changes the run, but it also changes the perception. And I think the perception on them was Toronto was going to drop. Toronto's not as good because Kawhi's not there. And I think as much as some of these professional athletes don't want to admit it, they listen to all this shit. They listen to all the chatter. And if they're not listening to it, all their inner circles are listening to it. So eventually in a conversation over a glass of wine or over a cigar, this is what they're talking about. Yo, can you believe this? Can you believe that? Those conversations are happening. So I think that's what favors them. And I think with Miami, I just think Dwayne Wade leaving last year and just like some of the impact he had on the younger guys, I think it rubbed out very well. And that Jimmy Butler going there, man, it's a huge identity like cue for some teams. Is getting one guy to like resonate with everybody else in the locker room. And look at how raised some of those younger guys. Hero, however you pronounce his last name. But like, I read an article actually about how Jimmy's embraced him in comparison to his stint with Minnesota and those young guys. And these guys in Miami want to work. They're hard, they're gritty.
Now, do you trust this team in a 7-game series? Like, I trust Toronto in 7 games more than I do Miami.
Never said that. I don't trust them yet, but it's also because they're unproven. I don't know what to expect from them. That's why I would give Philly the nod, because I saw Philly work Kawhi's team
Oh, don't do that.
I know, it's terrible. It was terrible. But that being said, is like I know but also that team had Jimmy. So I
Yeah, he
don't
was
know.
the he was the bailout system when Ben Simmons got lost in the dunker spot and couldn't do anything. Like I know it's gonna happen. Like I love Ben, I praise him, I talk about how great he is. And this postseason, I'm already mentally prepared for him to get lost in these spots where he's not going to be able to do anything because people forget what it's like, how different regular season basketball is to postseason ball until it gets to that time again. It's a different sport.
1,000,000%. Now, I think the last thing I think, in talking about the East, like, do you believe Milwaukee?
I do more than I ever have, but I'm still not insanely sold. Like I feel like they're a team that values the regular season more than everyone else. I'm a big believer in when you're a playoff team, most people don't care. You throw up a stinker on a Wednesday night in October. Like that stuff happens because you're focused on the playoffs. You're not focused on playing the Cleveland Cavaliers away randomly in November. Like that stuff's just going to happen. They value the regular season so much more than everyone else, but that doesn't take away from how good they are. I trust them more than I did last year, but could the Celtics beat them in 7? Sure. Could the Sixers? Sure. Could Toronto take them down in 7? Sure. Like they're not some powerhouse that I would be insanely afraid of.
Yeah, I would agree too, but man, I think they're regular season Cinderella, man. I just really think their style of play, like their big men have been so stretched out to like the top of the paint.
So
Without
true.
you know, everybody like I hate when the Nick Wrights and all these guys get on TV and talk about Milwaukee's big man, Philly's big man. The only big man in the East or in the league that really plays in the post is Joel.
Right.
Who else is a stretch of a 4 or a stretch of a 5. Milwaukee, Brook Lopez, Robin Lopez, they all play on the perimeter now. Spot up 3-point shooters. They'll set a screen, come out, take the shot. Giannis doesn't play in the post. He runs breaks. He might post you, but he's not posting up all game because physically he can't post you up. And I think they're gonna run into a problem once they start going cold shooting. And I think over a series, sometimes you hit those droughts, and I think what happens to them.
I think it's so funny that you just mentioned Joel Embiid's like the only player who plays in the post because if you listen to Philly sports talk radio, they like everyone freaks out about how much this guy, he's so out by the perimeter, he never backs up, he's never in the post. And look at the numbers. He leads the league in post ups. Now that's because a lot of people don't post up, but still, I mean, you can't watch Joel Embiid and say he never posts up.
But you know what it is I think don't want to look at the efficiency rate. Like it's like he's efficient there, but people want that. So since he's so efficient there, that's all they want him to do. But that's not what the game is anymore. The game,
right.
The paint. It's funny too because I saw a tweet like 2-3 days ago doing a compare and contrast from 20 in the NBA to today, and it's you have 5-6 guys in the post, and now you have 5-6 guys on the perimeter. Like it's a whole different game now, and centers have had to adjust games. But that doesn't take away the fact that Embiid's the most dominant in the league right now. Everybody's beef with it is he's not there enough, but he's still there by a landslide over the NBA.
Absolutely. No, I agree completely. Well, I thought this went very well. I'm very pleased by it, and we will definitely do this again. We have a back stretch of basketball, which is the most important stretch, so I appreciate you coming on.
Of course, I thank you for having me. Philly is 3-1 against the Celtics this regular season, but the irony in that is Boston was 3-1 against Philly last year in the regular season. Just
All right. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe.